Can you hear me now? Oh, great. I guess that works. Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? All good? Welcome to this session. This is the AI Town Hall on the threats and opportunities for AI in our world. My name is Lynette Kwamboka. I am the Senior Program Manager at the Global Partnership for the Data for Now initiative. And with me today, I have a lovely panel of distinguished professionals and people who are very experienced in the subject. So thank you for taking the time to come and share with us. And very importantly, thank you to the audience for taking the time to be here. I only have one rule in this session, and that is we are here to have fun in the conversation. So make sure you're having fun, right? So I'm going to start this panel with a very quick round of introduction, and then I will give direction on how we move. So you have the mic. Yeah, great.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Eliane Elbaum. I'm the lab manager of the AI Co-Innovation Lab of Microsoft here in Uruguay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vinay. I'm a senior manager at Aapti Institute. We are a tech policy research organization based in India. Thank you.
Good morning. Anir Chaudhary, policy advisor, Aspire to Innovate program, the Government of Bangladesh and UNDP Bangladesh.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Deshni Govender. I am the country focal point for a project called Fair Forward, Artificial Intelligence for All, and that is what the GI said.
Great, thank you. And now I need 2 volunteers. Any 2 volunteers? Just stand up. Hey, remember, this is supposed to be a fun session. Anyone? Just anyone? Great, thank you. One more person. You're the best. Stay standing. We're going to move on to a Slido poll. I like when we start sessions by setting expectations. So there's going to be, please go on to slido.com. There's your code. You can also look at the QR code and tell us what is the first word that comes to mind when you think of artificial intelligence. What is the first word that comes to mind when you think of artificial intelligence? But to my 2 volunteers, I would like for you to please introduce yourselves. There's a mic right next to you, and tell us why you are excited to join this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, buenos días, good morning. My name is Raquel Medialdea. I am an epidemiologist, and I work in the WHO Hub for Pandemic and Epidemic Intelligence. This es la Organización Mundial de la Salud, del Centro de Pandemias e Inteligencia Epidémica. I'm really excited because as an epidemiologist, the possibilities that artificial intelligence provide us to support the early detection, analysis, understanding, and prevention of epidemics, pandemics, and health threats are huge. So it's excited to be surrounded by experts and learn further together. Gracias.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Bueno, good morning.
Buenos días. Good morning. My name is Guatemala. I belong to a civil society organization. I work with human rights, security, and justice. And one of my main reasons to be here is the future of AI, considering AI as one of the main drivers for us to use and to make an impact on societies.
Cool. And as you can see, the biggest word that we have in our word cloud now is robots, when we think about AI. I honestly thought we would see more large language models, but robots still dominate. Is there anyone in the audience who said robots very quickly? I'd like to see. Yes, Aiden? Why? Why are you so afraid of the machines? Okay. Great. Um, Artificial intelligence is with us now, and we're really wondering and thinking, what is it going to do? You know, are the robots going to come and take over, or are there opportunities? You know, is ChatGPT going to make us better writers, or people who ask questions, or are they really going to improve the way that we think? Is it a case for a second brain, or is it a case for, you know, our brains being rendered obsolete, really? So I want to go back to the panelists, and we can start with you, Ellie. Could you please tell us what are the opportunities and threats you see when it comes to artificial intelligence?
All right. Breaking the ice. All right. See, I think it's a great time to be alive, honestly. I am an optimist in terms of AI. I think the ability to use natural language rather than complex, you know, SQL queries in technology is opening up a lot of opportunities for a lot of industries, for a lot of people. So I think it's a time to be empowered by technology. That's like the greatest opportunity I see. And if we are going to talk about threats, I think we shouldn't, I mean, we're at a revolution right now, like the fourth industrial revolution, they call it. And it's the first time that we've done this industrial revolution sort of grounded in the idea that there will be spillover effects that are non-desired, or they're not going to be as great as we think, and we're so on time. We shouldn't abdicate that power to stop what's not great of it, you know? So we're humans, and we're not machines. So we are the ones that are making this technology. So we are the ones that are being intelligent and are, you know, making machines more intelligent. So I think we've got a lot to cover and a lot to do in terms of, you know, our empowerment of all of this.
Great, thanks.
I think in terms of the thing that I'm most hopeful about AI is the ability to ease access to knowledge and information in general for large portions of the population worldwide. I mean, you know, I'm from India, and in India alone, we have 23 official languages and about 122 languages throughout the country. And for majority of the population, information on the internet is not easily accessible. And you know, AI or large language models like ChatGPT provide a very good opportunity, which isn't to say that there's a long way to go with them in how they're trained, but I think it's a great opportunity for their ability to make so much information available to so much of the population. That said, I'm unlike Elian, I'm quite pessimistic about technology in general. And one of the biggest fears I have is that with AI and with who controls the resources to train and, you know, deploy most of the big models we see, it's just going to end up cementing the position of a select few who are already, you know, behemoths in the tech industry. And that's something that and it's not something that I notice in the word cloud either, you know, and that's something that's gone missing quite often in looking at the power structures that exist. And I think it's going to lead to a lot more of a divide and furthering and deepening that divide. Thank you.
Great. Anil?
Thank you, Lynette. So Vinay talked about the fears. I'll add to that a world where we see growth, but jobless growth. So essentially, AI will take over some of our jobs, which it already is. But let me talk more about the hopes. Fears, I think we'll talk quite a bit about. From the word cloud, we saw mostly fears for some reason. We saw robots, we saw ChatGPT, we saw Terminator. But let me talk about the hopes. In 2020, when COVID hit Bangladesh, as it did all countries in the world. We had only one RT-PCR lab in a country of 170 million people. Just imagine, in the capital city, one PCR lab. So we had no effective way of tracking the disease. So what we did was we made a partnership with the 4 telcos in the country and said that we will ask people to do self-reporting of symptoms on an IVR system, and the telcos would use artificial intelligence to track the concentration of the disease based on the self-reporting information. So that's what we did for 4 months, and we tracked the disease. We actually did lockdowns based on the information, and we were able to effectively curb the spread of the disease using AI. So that was just one example. Recently, we deployed AI to track high-risk pregnancies, because we have about 60 to 70,000 health workers who go from door to door in the government, and a similar number within BRAC, which is the world's largest NGO. So these 100,000 plus health workers go from door to door for ANC visits. But we don't know who the high-risk pregnancies are. Again, AI is really helping us identify high-risk pregnancies. Recently also, we deployed a system in the education sector, which is allowing us to track information per student on their formative assessment. We are moving from a summative assessment to a formative assessment in education system, which is a revolution, a big revolution in Bangladesh, in a country like Bangladesh. And AI is helping us track achievement of every student. The last example I want to share with you is one from Google. We have shared our last 10 years of water data. You know that Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, and we have floods every year inundating large parts of the country. But we don't know which households actually are going to be inundated. So Google has developed a technology, and with the water data that we shared with Google, we now accurately predict which households are going to be inundated. And we have another system that we're working on with a New York organization called Give Directly, which is allowing us to understand poverty status of households on a real-time basis, again using AI. So combine the Google and the Give Directly technologies, we can now do anticipatory action before even the floods arrive. So that, based on research from Oxford, we can increase resilience by about 30%, because we can support households with cash or medicine support before floods actually hit those households. So these are the hopes of AI that we see across many different sectors. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Deshni.
I feel like after that statistical analysis, anything that I say would be completely irrelevant. No, so it's an interesting question, mostly because I am an optimist just by nature. If anyone knows me, I'm very high energy, very positive, always looking at the bright side. And consequently, it's quite interesting because I'm also a lawyer. And there's this eternal part of my brain that's always looking at risks and always looking at ways in which we need to mitigate risks. So there's this ongoing conflict in my life with everything on be positive, but look at the risk. Be positive, but look at the risk. And in the context of AI, I think that I would like to say that particularly as a gender justice champion, so I'm very big on women empowerment, and we work a lot of it in our project in Fair Forward, but also GIZ. I think that AI, digital, but AI in particular, has done a lot for the advancement of women and women's rights in particular, but also disadvantaged and minority groups. It gives a lot more people access, it gives a lot more people platform, not enough, but it's done more than what was done previously when digital didn't exist. The downside is that for AI to exist, it needs the data, but data, I mean, you can create data, then it's either synthetic, and then it's either whatever you want it to be, or you can use, well, historical data. But historical data is the reason why we are here. It's the reason why we're having conversations about inequality. It's the reason why we need to monitor AI. So it's almost like it's a circular problem with disadvantage. Use historical data to create AI, but then the AI is biased because of the historical data. So for me, it's a question of how do you kind of solve that problem, but also still remain optimistic on how digital, but particularly AI, can advance. And a lot of what I'd say would be focused in Africa. So I'm from South Africa, but I work a lot in the Africa region as well. How it actually can advance previously disadvantaged minority groups financially and historically unequal countries.
Great. It looks like everyone wants to be very optimistic about this, and which is great. But in 1950, anyone who went through computer science class knows about Alan Turing. He sought to find out if machines can think, something called the Turing test, right? And now, you know, with what I am hearing, it sounds like we have accepted that AI is here, it's helping us, but we are also thinking about what are some of the threats that it could pose. So Ellie, I'll start with you, and we'll only, you know, do it with you and Anir. In under 1 minute, can we finally say that machines can think? Can think.
I think machines can do some thinking, which is not saying that machines can think completely or equally as humans. But I think there are technological solutions, and with the augmentation of compute power and the development of technology and the innovations that a lot of companies are making in the market, I think the reasoning power of machines, and especially of large language models, is really improving.
Anir?
When you talk about Turing test, I mean, if the question is whether you're interacting with the machine by looking at it, or is it through an interface? And if you're actually interacting with the machine through an interface, you're actually already seeing that machines have passed the Turing test. So from the Turing test standpoint, machines are already thinking. It's beating you in chess, which has happened many years ago. It's actually finding cure for diseases that would have taken us, I mean, mRNA, I mean, Moderna actually used AI to find that. It would have taken us years to find it if we did not use AI. So it's already thinking, but the question is whether machines are self-conscious or not, whether it has emotions, whether it's able to make ethical choices, or it's basically based on all the data that you're giving it. So those are still questions, jury's still out, but since we are still at the beginning stage of AI, even though AI has been in operation for decades, 50 plus years, but we're seeing the biggest leaps in AI with the large language models just in the last 5 years, and in public just in 1 year. Just 1 year ago, right, in November, we saw ChatGPT coming out. So jury's still out, but I think machines are going to be able to become self-conscious as well in the next 5 to 7 years.
And that's a really important point, because then when we are talking about this, we have to start thinking about safety and trust in AI. So Vinay, I'm going to turn to you to ask what guardrails need to be in place to ensure that trust and safety in AI is actually included? And then have you seen any models that work for engaging communities?
Sure, yeah, I think primarily, and you know, to Anif's point as well, AI has been around for a while, but I think it's really caught on in public imagination, and even in the word cloud we saw, one of the biggest things was ChatGPT, but I think we need to be clear that AI is not just generative AI, right? It's a lot more, and it's already in most of the technology we use. And I think one of the primary things we need is explainability, especially when it comes to algorithmic decision making, because we're seeing that happen a lot more, especially with search engines. I think most people use Google, and we need to understand why certain search results are prioritized over others, because it's also a fundamental threat to not just the way society functions as a whole, but also to individual autonomy on how we think, given how much it pushes people further into their own biases and confirms those biases. And so I think some level of explainability and accountability is critical. The second thing with AI, and especially generative AI, is that there should be some transparency on the data sets that they've been trained on. To Deshni's point as well, right? So many of the data sets are inherently biased. And so if there's clarity on what sets they're trained on, there's the ability to trust the AI systems a lot better. And I think the last one on that is also some clarity in terms of the legal regulations around a lot of these AI technologies because they tend to sometimes operate in a bit of a legal vacuum where people are unsure of what their rights exactly are or whether their rights can be enforced. In terms of models that work for engaging communities, I think first and foremost, the level of engagement should be ideally at the local city level or like a municipality level because we're running a program with the ODI, with my colleague Joe who's in the crowd here, and the thing that we've seen from most of the people we've spoken to is that success in engaging communities or people happens mainly at the local level. And so that's something that should be very, very critical and prioritized.
Great. I'm going to pause there. I need 3 volunteers from the audience. Any 3 to stand up. Thank you. 2. I need 1 more. Can I volunteer the gentleman at the back in a blue lanyard? So that could be anyone, but specifically you. Yes, you're looking at the lady yes, you. Yeah. Oh, lucky you, someone else stood up. Oh, is he leaving? Okay. So for my 3 volunteers, I'm going to ask you to start thinking about questions, just any one question that after we're done with this session, you're going to have to ask. Is that okay? Actually, I have 4 volunteers now. 5, perfect. So any one question that we can ask when we go to the to the audience. Yeah? All good? Perfect. Deshni, we're going to come back to you and find out, in the work that you're doing with GIZ, I know you support a lot of programs in Africa. Where do you see the biggest demand for support on AI in Africa? Are there obvious gaps that are not being addressed? And how can we address them?
So I'm going to refer to some of my notes that actually came up yesterday. Hinting, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Sustainability, guys. Paper. I'm just kidding, by the way. So in terms of Africa, I think, firstly, what I've noticed, and this is my opinion, and I am more than happy to be challenged and debated by our 5 very cool volunteers. Well done. People often also say, well, we do work in Africa, or we work with Africa, or we want to work with Africa. What they seem to forget is Africa is a continent, not a country. It's not a village. There's also 55 countries, if we include now South Sudan as the new country, but 55 countries, and they're very different regions, very much like LATAM, very different areas, different nuances, different cultures. And that should be the first part when people say, well, what are the problems in Africa? I think that we need to start looking at continentally how we actually break that down. So yes, we have similar problems, but it's not just one big country. I think what I've noticed in some of the areas that we've worked in, so my project works in 5 countries in Africa, specifically South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda, and Uganda. And across this, some of the things I've noticed particularly, especially in South Africa, is number 1, we do a lot of research, so there's great research going on, but then we're not able to translate that research and development at academia level into usable use cases for society. Like that bridge needs to be there between taking the research and then converting that into a use case. I think the other thing that I've noticed also is the development, and this is not a South Africa problem, but across some of the other countries, is development of a talent pipeline. So you've probably heard, and this is not an ongoing, this is not a new topic to Africa, and I'm sure not Global South generally, is the development of the talent pipeline and capacity building. But, and I say this, but before my life at GIZ, I worked in corporate, yes, and particularly banking, and I have to tell you that in the world of financial services, it's here now, online all the time. So when you look at now developing talent pipeline, remember that people do have to start learning, developing women, developing minority groups, developing youth to actually be able to participate in AI. And these are people that I'm talking about that historically didn't have access to universities, didn't have the money to study, didn't have the money and the computing power and the hardware and the infrastructure and the software that is all needed to be able to become a data scientist or an analyst or anything in the adjacent field and participate. We're all talking about capacity development, but what does that actually mean? And so in the context of industry particularly, when industry wants data scientists and people are still in the development phase, what do? There's foreign import of talent, and that's a problem in Africa particularly. Some of the other things I've noticed also is computing power. When we want to train language models, not large language models. Different conversation, but happy to chat about in the coffee break. We found that nuanced and specific small language models actually outperform large language models in certain instances. Yes, Microsoft, happy to have that conversation. We'll take it on. But computing power is also only available in certain labs, in certain institutes. So if somebody were to participate but didn't have the money to go to university or couldn't get into a scholarship program and wanted to self-learn, how do you do that? And I mean, also with universities, computing power and GPUs are incredibly expensive. So how does that get funded? How do you advance research in Africa if Africa or LATAM or Asia doesn't have that computing hardware because it's been taken up by big tech or countries with digital infrastructure? And that brings me to the other point on donors and funding. Donors and funding are great, but, and this applies in all aspects of the world, anyone who brings the money also brings the priorities. And sometimes the donor funding priorities are not the priorities that are needed in countries. And then you have a little bit of a dissonance. You either got to do some compromise of, okay, we need the money and we need to solve this problem, but the donor wants to solve that problem, so let's see how we can come halfway. And then you're not actually solving the problems you need to solve. But also, it's important that you solve the problems for the country. If you're coming as a donor, then, or a funder or whatever, and I say that fully cognizant of working for the GIZ. So it's also why it's important that you have people in countries understanding the problems. And last and most importantly, and something I'm also an advocate of, access to data. Access to data that's generated by citizens, but also access to data that's privately held, that's important for social impact. So how do we make that openly available?
Thanks, Deshni. The goal we had with the panel was that no one would censor themselves and that they would tell the truth, but I'm sure there were people who were hoping that you would say there's a lot of money from GIZ and we're going to give it to AI practitioners, but thank you for telling us the truth. And I want to follow this up with you, Eli. Deshni has mentioned that there's 54 countries in Africa, 55, I needed that. And Vinay, you said how many languages are there in India? Sorry? 122. So when we're thinking about large language models, there's, work cut out there. But Eli, I am sure there are some common needs for AI development in the work that you're doing at Microsoft. What does that tell you in terms of the future opportunities and gaps when it comes to AI?
So I think just to frame my answer, and one of the solutions that we've found, not for all of the challenges that you've posted, which are true and so real, is the Uruguayan government in this long-term policy of innovation has invested in many iterations of innovation. And one of them is this AI co-innovation lab that Microsoft operates. So it's sort of like using Microsoft to advance the goals for innovation that the country has. So of course it's a decision that the government made, an investment that the government made, but what I want to highlight is the partnership that we managed to make with them so that the acceleration of AI solutions goes according to what the government of Uruguay is trying to advance. And that means accelerating the last technological mile in a lot of industries. A lot of them, some of them are agro-tech, so optimization of the moment that the rice needs to be extracted from the ovens and the new rice has to be put in so that you don't waste time in your ovens and that your production is optimized, and as a small producer you can sell more. Or healthcare solutions, so one of our customers is designing a remote sensing of heart diseases. So it starts an alarm when there's some abnormality happening with the people's hearts. We've got financial services coming into the lab. We've got communication services. We've got all sorts of industries coming into the lab and accelerating their solutions and improving the accuracy of their solutions, which is a big thing for AI, improving the accuracy of the responses and improving the accuracy of how data is used and the usability of data, right? So, I guess we're not going to solve the world's problems, not at all. I'm not saying that at all. But I think building partnerships with governments in the way that Microsoft did for this lab is one of the ways of finding like mutual governance of this whole, new movement that's happening, and that it will happen either you want or you don't. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And the final 3 minutes to you, Anir. We have heard about, safety and trust in AI. We've heard about what the development partners are thinking when it comes to financing. We've heard about, the opportunities, and we're hoping the private sector might solve all our problems. But since that is not going to happen, how is Bangladesh thinking about, AI readiness? And what can the private sector do?
Thank you, Lynette. A very important question. In Bangladesh, we developed the first AI strategy in 2019 for about 7 sectors, so health, education, manufacturing, public service delivery, so on and so forth. And then I talked about how AI actually really helped us during COVID in 2020 in an unplanned way. We hadn't planned on it, but we just stumbled across the possibility of using AI to track the disease, and we did that. But since then, starting in 2021, which is when we started the planning for what we now call a smart Bangladesh. So between 2008 and 2021, we were in the era of what was called digital Bangladesh, a clarion call made by our Prime Minister in 2008 at a time when we had a per capita income of about $650, deep in an LDC status, but we used technology to actually overcome that and become a low middle income country. And the next target to become a smart Bangladesh is 2041, another 18 years, to become a high income country. And using AI is part of that. Using actually technology is part of that, but AI most importantly. So in 2021, right after COVID, when we understood the value of AI, we actually started with the Cabinet Secretary as the lead. He's the head of our civil service. We started talking to different agencies. So far, we've talked to about 280 agencies in the government and started understanding how they want to leverage AI. About 1,000 ideas have been generated. About 50 projects have been launched in the last 2 years to understand, experiment. We still need a lot of compute power. We need capacity development within government. We need partnership with the private sector, of which we are actually building now. This is all happening in tandem. But AI is seen to be a center piece of our focus for technological development and socioeconomic development for the next 18 years. So that's how we're planning. We're now drafting an AI policy which covers about 15 sectors within private sector and also within service delivery sector within the government. But the unprecedented interest and capacity development that we are seeing within the government is actually very, very encouraging. We are aware of the guardrails issues. We are aware of the safety issues. Putin talked about a few years ago that if you can control AI, you can actually control the world, which may be true. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and the likes of them actually talked about how, Sundar Pichai talked about how AI is likened to the invention of fire and nuclear power. So it's at that level of capacity that we're talking about. So we must use it responsibly and safely, and that's where the guardrails are very, very important. But at the same time, we don't want to actually stop innovation. So by putting guardrails too prematurely on the innovators, potentially private sector, we may actually stop innovation too early. So I think we need to strike the right balance, and that's what we're trying to do within Bangladesh, but learning from other countries in the south and also from the north. And that's a shared journey, trying to get to the shared goals, the opportunities that AI can actually unleash. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And now we're going to head out back to the audience. You have had, what our distinguished panel has said. So, where are my 4 volunteers? I see one. Yes. So we can start with you at the back. If you don't mind, you can walk to any of the 2 mics. Yeah. So for this, please feel free to ask a question or to reflect on the first question that we had in terms of what your biggest hopes or fears are when it comes to AI. Name and organization, please.
First of all, sorry for my English, by the way. I'm Juan from Uruguay. I have the question. In every revolution, industrial revolution, people are worried about their jobs. How the AI is going to reconvert the day-by-day jobs, like normal jobs, like how the people can reconvert their lives with the AI, like the AI is, like you say, is here with us. That's my question.
Great. I'll direct that to Anir. Just keep it. We'll take the other 2 questions and then we'll come back to the panel. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm Agnes from Kenya. And my question actually is more of a contribution, especially on the AI side. When you're talking about how whether machines can think, I think more of it happens when you get to train most of the model, because a machine is meant to execute. So the more you train it, the more you're able to execute it. So here comes my question, especially now because you are speaking about the government. And we saw a large problem on especially our data that we get to deal on, especially on the data on the government side. Because before we come to apply to all these AI stuff, definitely we have to get to have that data well structured and well formed to be able to be modeled by the machine learning models and the deep learning models to be able to come on the AI side. That means that the process still has to come back to the data still on the ground. So like what are the processes, or which initiative do you want to take, especially here the Bangladesh, you guys have taken like a step ahead. Maybe you could give an insight of how the process has been, because getting to apply that is also a bit a challenge, because it also needs a lot of big technologies. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Agnes. We had a 3rd volunteer. Yeah, oh, Al, over to you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Al, and my question is, the internet as has existed has not spoken our languages. In general, you'll find that majority of the people in this conference don't speak English, but the internet not only speaks English, but also speaks English slang and all other derivatives of English. But you'll find that our languages, whether it is Kiswahili or Spanish or Portuguese or whatever, are not very well represented in English. As we come into the world of AI, you also find that that is also a real problem in the sense that people can still be disenfranchised and excluded because of the fact that AI forces them to learn English so that they can be able to interact with it. Is this something that worries you? What are the sort of investments that you have heard being made so that AI is also being developed in other countries, in other languages, and that large language models are also being developed in other languages, so that then the people of Bangladesh or the people of Kilifi, where I come from, also can engage with the new internet that is AI-powered in more effective ways?
Thank you, and I'm going to give that question to you, Vinay, especially because of the many languages there are in India. I think then, you know, it's only relevant. Great. I think we had one more volunteer. Yes, go for it.
Hi, I'm Lucas Martino from Invensis. I'm from Uruguay. I'm an SAP consultant, and I'm starting to study data science. The question I have to make is, in which field do you think we need to focus our development of artificial intelligence for a better contribution to society?
Great, thank you. And I think that's for you. Yeah, perfect. Any one more? Aidan, you look like you, yeah? Please go for it. Oh, great, yeah, we'll take one more.
Hello, Aidan Yakuze from Tanzania. The question to the gentleman from Bangladesh. You made a statement which had me very interested and excited. You said AI is going to be sentient or self-aware in the next 5 or 6 years. What rights will the creature we have created, which is sentient and self-aware, have and claim over our, our own? Do we treat it as a human being? Do we treat it as a machine or a tool? How do we deal with this creature that we will have created?
Thanks, Aidan. And then last question, yes, the gentleman at the back.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Oliver Morgan from the World Health Organization. And then I know a lot of the comments about AI have been ones of concern, but actually they're huge opportunities as well. And all of us who work with kind of national data or nationally collected data, or any data actually, we probably don't extract the maximum value out of that data. And actually we do have a responsibility, certainly if we're collecting data from our populations, to derive as much value from that data as we can. So the challenge for us, certainly those of us who work in the public sector, is how do we engage with AI in a most positive way so that we can maximize the opportunities of the data that we are already collecting. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, and that will go to you, Deshni. So Ellie, we can start with you. Yeah.
To answer the gentleman's question, I would say go in Azure and use our services, but that's not the tongue-in-cheek answer. But honestly, though, there's so much going on in the ecosystem, and I think what's most interesting now is all the new algorithms and machine learning. Those really can change a society. So I think exploring those and like doing research on all of those is really what the future will bring.
On the question on languages, I think, and Elian's probably better placed to answer this, but I think what's really important is the availability of more data to train the systems. I think that's just the basic thing that is needed. Because I think the organization Rest of World put out a very interesting report last week where they compared ChatGPT's performance in English and a few other regional languages, and they found that the error rates were much higher in the regional languages. And the only way that's going to improve is if there's more people training it and more resources spent towards that. I would also just very quickly like to make reference to Juan's question about AI affecting jobs. And I think there's a very, very interesting podcast It's called Tech Won't Save Us, and the episode is called The Real History of the Luddites. And I think the Luddite movement has a very, very interesting parallel to understand how AI is likely to affect jobs now, in that it's not just going to replace jobs wholesale. It's going to be very gradual. It's going to complement people's jobs. And what that means is likely less pay for people. It's also going to start replacing the lowest skilled jobs, which means that people from lower classes of society are going to start losing their jobs more. And that's something that's very important to think about, that you need to start retraining people. And so it's not necessarily job loss, but job displacement. And that's likely very problematic from an economic divide.
Great, thanks. Anir, there are a few questions your way. You have about 2.5 minutes.
I'll try to combine them, actually. I think the first question was about what happens to jobs. So Goldman Sachs predicted that there'll be about 300 million jobs lost in the next 5 years. World Economic Forum predicted about 85 million jobs lost by 2025. But World Economic Forum also said that 97 million jobs will be created because of AI. So what we need to develop is AI literacy. We're already using AI, right? I mean, we're carrying around this AI gadget in our pockets, all of us. So we're already using AI, whether we are aware of it, whether we know it, whether we're proficient in using AI, we're using it. So previously, we used to say that AI will replace human beings in job market. Now we say AI will replace human beings who don't know how to use AI. So that's where we're talking about AI literacy. And we have to define it. We have to define it for specific sectors. We have to, for doctors, for teachers, for carpenters. So how is AI going to help them get rid of menial jobs, perhaps? So I think that's where we need to figure this out. But what we need to do is to understand the micro skills that AI is actually going to affect. It's not the whole carpentry or the whole doctor's profession that will be affected. It's micro skills in that profession. And that's why we need to actually dissect what a profession looks like, what an occupation looks like, and understand where AI today will actually replace those micro skills or will augment those micro skills. And that's how we need to plan. On the issue of data, since AI actually learns, it's different algorithm. It's not like rule-based algorithms that we used to in the software world for the last, I don't know, 60, 70 years. It actually learns on its own because it's neural net driven. So just like a child learns, just like we learn and as adults, it actually learns based on inputs that it has access to. So ChatGPT, interestingly, actually learned Bangla. It was not trained on Bangla, but it actually picked up stuff, Bangla content that's on newspapers, on articles, on huge amount of Bangla content in Bangladesh and in West Bengal. It actually learned the language model on its own to an extent. But it needs to be trained further. So as to your point, and many small languages that are not used as extensively as, let's say, English or Spanish, we need to make a deliberate effort to train AI on those languages. Otherwise, it won't learn those languages. It will actually create a bias. I mean, we have actually seen how bias made huge negative consequences, let's say in EU. We actually saw AI making very detrimental conclusions about social safety net frauds and eradicated families from the social safety net system erroneously because it had a certain bias that was introduced without even knowing about it. So it just felt that it was making right decisions where it actually made the wrong decisions. And the government actually had problems with that. So we need to figure out the data issues, how to train AI in the right way so that bias is not introduced there. And the last point I wanted to point out is the issue of rights. Now, we're talking about rights of artificial intelligent beings, right, AI beings, and then rights of human beings, right, human rights, AI rights. But what if we actually are a blend of AI and human beings, right? I mean, we will actually have body parts in the next 10 years in a commercially available manner that will be partly cyborg, right? So what happens to the rights of those things? So we need to start a conversation now with the private sector. Private sector is far ahead in this conversation. If you look at Boston Dynamics, if you look at Google, if you look at the leading robotic companies, Google, Amazon, Microsoft have been buying off these companies by the droves. We don't even know what's happening in Google X. That's a very secret chamber in Google. So rights are going to come up in a way that we least expected. So the conversation now needs to start between the government, private sector, non-profit sector, and the development partners, and media as well, to make sure that we strike the right balance in rights as well. Sorry, I took too long, but it's a very exciting topic for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much about that. And I want to plug some work that we do around access to privately held data with what you have talked about when it comes to micro skills. The only way to know that is if we have data from Microsoft, for example, that is telling us here is where AI innovation and technology is going, and for government to then start looking at reskilling, you know, in terms of changing the curricula or, you know, introducing courses that can then shift that workforce from, you know, what is going to be replaced. So very exciting conversation. I totally agree. Deshni, over to you.
Sure. So I think I'm going to probably touch on a few things, but if we're looking at, and the question was, how do we engage with AI in a positive way and extract value from data? So 4 very quick points. Number 1 is citizen engagement. So, and it touches on the gentleman's point about the fear of, coming back to the fear of jobs. When you engage citizens, so for AI, so let's take a step back. For any new social media, for example, to be adopted, and if you think of WhatsApp, if you think of Instagram, it started somewhere, somehow. And then somewhere the citizens saw value in it. For example, WhatsApp, it's a cheap and easy way to communicate. You can send a voice note, you can send a picture. I've been chatting to my mom in South Africa. We had a video call while I was sitting at the airport because I can, and it's made my life easy. So I'm adopting it. And the thing about AI is that you want citizens, or any product, whether it's a banking product, whether it's a health product, it's only going to work when citizens adopt it. And when citizens adopt it, it's because it solves some kind of a problem or need in their lives. So the first part is, how is AI actually solving a problem and the need in their lives? And that brings me to the second point on relatability. We're talking about AI and we're talking about products and services, and it's great that we're talking about maybe, I don't know, very advanced, complex topics on quantum computing. But to the everyday person on the street, it's not solving their problem. It's not helping them understand how they can still be in a job in 5 years' time. So when we're talking about the need for citizen-generated data or AI or products or services or any automated decision-making, it needs to be relatable to the citizens, to the people. Or to the subject matter or the area that you're solving for. If it's not relatable to them, nobody has the time. We have other priorities in life. So if you're going to take something that says, let me help show you how AI is going to help you save your job, or how AI is going to better educate your child so your child has a better future than what you had, people are going to stand up and take notice. And also inclusion of citizens, civil society actors. People take responsibility when they're included. This is why a lot of the time top-down measures and like top-down policy making doesn't really get very far. And then the last one was about culture change. So extracting value from data in particular, and I'm going to use Sheng as an example, and please correct me if I mess this one up, but so for those who don't know, Sheng is basically like a colloquial, unofficial, official language spoken in Nairobi, which is literally a mixture of Swahili and English, and it's called Sheng. And the thing about Sheng, which makes it interesting, is because English and culture in context, as we're talking about social media and norms, as that changes, the way you speak changes. And if the way you speak is constantly changing, that means the data that is today is probably irrelevant in a year or 2 years or 3 years. So in that context, you need to have ongoing and relevant data to extract value from the data in that context. So you need to understand the data you're actually working with, not just say, let's generate the data, but when we generate citizen data, what value is that data going to add? And then if you don't mind, because this topic is very near and dear to my heart, the NLP question.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. NLP question. Al, I invite you to please come and have a coffee chat with me. It's something we work on a lot, but on that context, the problem with digitization in English is that it forces people to assimilate to a culture and a language that's not theirs, and that's not okay. So there's There's a session on it later where I talk about NLP and the official statistics, but please let's have a coffee chat. I think you're going to like some of the answers I have for you.
Great, thank you, and very sorry to be rushing everyone. We're almost coming to an end of this, and now we're actually giving our wrapping up remarks. And the question here is, what can each of the sectors you come from, be it development world, private sector, government, civil society, offer to build an enabling environment for the responsible development and use of AI? We could start with you.
Yeah, I think as a technology company, we are very worried and we are taking all the steps necessary in order to make sure that all the software and hardware we build is built in with AI security and is built in with the capacities to stop or interfere in a moment that we think it should be stopped. You know what I mean? So. And as a tech company, I think that most of what we can do is build it in our software, build it in our cloud, in our hardware, and make sure that we're delivering the highest standards in security for our customers.
I think civil society is already offering quite a bit to ensure that AI is a lot more responsible. I think other sectors need to start listening to civil society, if anything. But that said, I also think that civil society needs to start working with each other. Very often, especially for civil society from the global south, we end up only looking at examples and statistics and information from the global north. And going beyond just that sector, I think civil society as a whole also needs to be very strong about trying to set the agenda. To Deshni's point as well, too often civil society is reacting to agendas set by industry or government, and I think we can be more proactive in forcing the agenda to be what we think it should be and what we know it should be. Thank you.
Elaine talked about how AI safety will need to be built into the cloud and the offerings from the big techs. But the question is, why would they do that, right? So the responsibility of a big tech is to the shareholders. It's profit maximization. If not building those maximizes profit, why would you do that? Right? So it doesn't work. So therein lies the issue of regulation. Therein lies the issue of discussing with the concerned citizens. And that's what we're trying to do in Bangladesh. Just last week, we had a conference on AI and digital public infrastructure. So just like we have public infrastructure in the physical space, now we're talking about how to build the right guardrails for the digital public infrastructure, including AI, especially AI. It was an international conference. We had a lot of people coming in to talk about their concerns. We had a discussion with Windsurf, who could not come in person. He's known as one of the fathers of the internet. And next year, the 50th year of internet will be celebrated across the world. And one of the things he talked about is that the way internet was initially designed as an open platform, benefiting all, benefiting everybody, AI is not being designed as such. AI is being designed by corporate interests of the big techs. That's how it's actually coming up. The public sector does not understand AI at all, or understands it so much less than the big techs. Many of the startups are actually dabbling in AI. If you look at Silicon Valley or in many other parts of the world where there is a craze about AI investment and AI experimentation. But again, without understanding the right guardrails that need to be put in place. So there is no right answer to that. I think what we need to see is a sincere dialogue facilitated by a fairly influential body, multilateral body, whether that's the UN or whether that's the World Economic Forum or whether that's the Commonwealth Secretariat or any of the likes. We don't know, but I'm really glad that we are convening and talking about these issues in a very open and frank manner. And that's why I think these discussions will actually help us get to the right point. But I think it's a journey. I don't think it's a destination. It's a journey where all the different stakeholders have to make the right decisions along the way. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so maybe just three probably very brief points. So coming from a development agency point of view, I think the first thing we can do, and definitely should do and must do, and do in Fair Forward's case, is build ecosystems. So, and when we talk about building ecosystems, it's actually starting like as the basic, having, for example, an NLP meetup, or having a meetup on open data and licensing. So start by building communities, and then those communities build ecosystems, because then information gets shared and then solutions get born out of these engagements. So that's the first one. The second one is localization. I think that is the key thing that seems to be missing, and that's where we empower local people, but also that localization, I think there's a lot more that can be done with South-South learning, because there seems to be this proliferation of North-South learning, and I feel that we can learn a lot from the global South, from different countries and different regions with each other. So, and then the last thing would probably be in the context of working with governments, so not necessarily just saying, oh, we're here to help you formulate a policy, but if you're as an organization, so for example, with GIZ and the projects we do, we say, cool, we have a community that you can engage, we have sectors that we are able to build, we've got all of this localization happening, let us help you help the people. And in that way, and I say this because I'm South African, by the way, I'm not German. I am South African working for the GIZ, but living in South Africa. So I can say that in context, like I am helping GIZ, but in a way helping my country. And in that way, you're able to actually build when it comes to policy, when it comes to engaging people. So it's not a top-down approach. So yeah, I know we're out of time, so I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Deshni. Before I come to you for I'd like to get 2 volunteers. Any 2? I think you have seen it's very painless. Any 2?
It's like a magic show.
Yes, I'm going to go with you, sir. Yes, you. And thank you. Perfect. So I want you to think about a question, right? As we go to Elian, what is the AI you want to see? Everyone is talking about something, that is happening somewhere out there, but what really do you want to see when it comes to AI? Okay? Yes.
And my question goes back to that, which is the adoption of what's been going on. So as she said, she used WhatsApp to message her mom and video call her mom. People are using, and ChatGPT came out this year, and it's got more than I guess it's like 100 million users now. And honestly, OpenAI wasn't big tech at all. And they made available and deployed this technology. And what users did were like, we like it. Like we know how to interact with the chat. We love it. It's answering questions. It's making my life easier. I'm a student. It's giving me essays. Teachers, teachers are suffering with this. But what I mean is we shall not forget that users will either adopt a technology or won't, And although many may say that big tech could influence that, many times we don't. So, and that does not depend, and of course, what tech can do is be fast in, making deals with these companies or with these entrepreneurs who are being successful, or their products are being deployed and are being loved by people. But what we cannot do is regulation and thinking of citizens. That's what governments should do. And that's where the dialogue should be open and should be frank and should be honest in saying, what can either of us do and how can we understand each other better so that we actually build a partnership that works for everyone?
So I went on Google to ask Google how many users ChatGPT has, because ChatGPT does not have the latest numbers, but it's 180 million. Yes, perfect. So we're going to now go to our final Slido of the day. The screen is going to change in just a second. And for this Slido, we're going to find out from you, after this session, do you feel more or less optimistic about the future of AI? But while that is loading, my two volunteers, please tell us what kind of AI you would like to see. For the rest of the room, please go ahead with this. Yeah.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Lucas. I'm from the Statistics Institute here in Uruguay. I think that the speak has been really interesting, and I'm not really proficient in AI, but I've learned a lot. So I think that something interesting about the topic is something that some of the speakers mentioned, and it is about the priorities. I think that we have a lot of data that we can use to take advantage, but the real question is how we use it, and if we use it to make the good and to help the ones who need it. So I think that we should focus on the priorities of, I don't know, if companies, organizations, or governments. So I think that's a very interesting point.
Great, thank you very much. And that brings me to one of my favorite quotes by Professor Gary King, and he says, "There is a big data revolution, but it is not the quantity of data that is the revolution. The big data revolution is that now we can actually do something with that data." Yep.
Oh, hi, my name is Fernanda Escovino. I'm from Base dos Datos. I said a few words previous in the morning. But I'm from an NGO in Brazil that actually make public data accessible to people. So we gather a lot of data. So right now we have a public data lake with over 2 terabytes of data and 8 billion lines of data already treated for everyone to access. And I work a lot with data science and all this. So I think first, we have big problems that need big solutions to address these big problems. So I think that as humans, we have our capabilities to address some of those issues, but AI could help a lot to help us to give more velocity to what we do. But I also think that one thing that Aidan said early in the morning that got me thinking also, that is a discussion about humanity. So the more that we advance in AI, the more we advance in the discussions about what makes us humans. And also about what are the rights that the humans have, what are the rights that artificial intelligence have, and who should decide it. So I think this is a great discussion about how we can relate to agreement as humanity about what is the basic stuff that people need to survive, and what are the rights, and what are the ethical that should be related to AI. So who decides about this? So yeah, this is what I think about when I think in AI in the next years and the next decades to come. It is a great agreement on what it is that makes us humans and what we need as humans to have great lives, to be happy. So it is this.
Great, thank you very much. And as you can see, the vote is in. We have about the same. So, you came here with an opinion and you've stayed with it. But I must say that we have people who are now feeling more optimistic about AI. So panelists, well done. You've done a great job. And we have about 13%. I'll take that. It's probably because I spoke too much. So we'll do a better job next time. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Eliane, Vinay, Anir, and Deshni for taking the time and for giving us their very good perspective. I would like to, for us to give a round of applause to all the people that I volunteered to ask the questions and to give their perspective. And before we close, Anir, you have a quick thing to say? Yeah.
At the UN General Assembly, just about a month ago, we launched something called the Zero Digital Divide campaign. So technology often actually widens the digital divide. But we feel that with AI, we can actually narrow that divide and bring it to zero in the next 20 years. So I'd like all of you to join that campaign. It's #ZeroDigitalDivide. And we also launched a center in New York called Equality Center, E-Quality Center. So I'll send out more information to the organizers. I don't have a slide or anything. Just wanted to announce that. Thank you very much. Really appreciate this.
Great, and a final round of applause to everyone for coming to this session. Have a lovely rest of the festival de Datos. Have a good afternoon. Thanks.
you.